That's a really good start. Okay, so my name's Laura McCrory and I'm the Conservation and Biodiversity Manager at North Lanarkshire Council within the Green Space Department. So part of my responsibility there is to look after our local nature reserves. In North Lanarkshire, we have recently acquired another local nature reserve, so we have 10 now, and this is one of our 10 local nature reserves, and this one in Kilsyth, of course. So it's part of my job to look at ways we can improve our local nature reserves, and I came across an opportunity to work with SEPA on this one to make some quite extensive improvements. The large part of the work here is the restoration of the river channel. When we were looking at it, we're looking for opportunities for improvements. It was recognised that the Garrell that runs by Dumbreck Nature Reserve was straightened probably over 100 years ago, and we think for agricultural reasons. This straightenings's restricted the channel and in some places causes flooding, potentially downstream and in the immediate local area. It's also not particularly good for wildlife, and that's one of our priorities, is to improve habitat for wildlife. And kind of priority species like salmon that use the river course, and eels, as well as other species like otters and kingfishers. The list kind of goes on. So SEPA were really interested in working with the council and the opportunity to bring this river back to its natural course. And through survey work, we found alluvial sediment in the nature reserve, which showed that naturally the river would have meandered through the wetland there. So the plan is, and is currently happening since September this year, to bring the river back into the nature reserve, which is no small feat. And it's taken a lot of work by the people that have come to the meeting today. We'll tell you a bit more about that. I'll just move on to the next slide so I can show you the plans. So can you see my cursor there?
Yes.
Yes, right. So this is up at St Patrick's Primary School, and you can see the football pitches there, the running track, the football pitches, and the Garrell's coming down here. So this is the existing course of the Garrell as it continues in that very straight, constrained line, and this is the new course. So up here would be what we would call a kind of two section channel, so we're widening it out a little bit, and then it comes back into the reserve. You can see all these lovely meanders. So a much more natural looking form of a river course. And around this, due to the public consultation we've been doing since 2017 by various means, the paths were of a primary concern to the public. There was a lot of feeling we wanted to keep these paths and keep circular routes and improve the paths and reduce flooding as far as possible. So that's been very carefully included in the design. There's also, because it's a floodplain, we have to be realistic about it, and the area will still flood. So we've been careful to design those paths to be resilient to flooding, more resilient than they are at the moment. So there's some asphalt surfaces in there that can take that flooding better and be more resilient to them. So I've gone through that quite quickly now. I'm just going to, and there'll be opportunity for questions at the end. Now the next picture I'm going to show you, the site has been cordoned off for a little while, so it will look quite different. This is a drone footage of the meandered sections that are being put in place now. So you can see down here the Garrell, the existing Garrell, and these are the newly meandered sections winding their way down, well underway by George Leslie. There's another one there. You can see some of the water's already in there, and this is a gravel substrate. I'll let Francis talk a little bit more about the actual formation of the river channel in his section. Here's one of the new paths that are in place. And here's the asphalt path that runs along the side. And we're also making some improvement to the bridges. This is where we've taken it away before we build it back up again. I'll just go to this slide again and pay a little bit more attention to the paths so I can show you the improvements. So there's path improvements at both sides of the Garrell at this section. At this side, there are 7 little bridges in there, and that's to help with the movement of water into the wetland and bogside pond. This area, to anyone that's ever walked it and knows anything about it, is extensively flooded. The water comes flying down the Kilsyth hills through all the constrained channels in Kilsyth and then basically bursts out at its first opportunity here, and the surfaces have been worn away. In fact, our access officer told us last time she was out, it was so flooded she saw little fish swimming on where the path's meant to be. So it's really quite bad flooding there. We have the asphalt path that continues down here, and then we have a kind of more natural path, which is what we're more used to in our local nature reserves, and we would keep to if we could if it wasn't for the flooding, which goes nearer to the new meandered channel, so people can get a good view of that. And it joins up again down here, and you can walk along here and back up into the reserve. So yes, quite a lot of work in there. A lot of improvements, a lot of habitat improvements, specifically for a lot of our priority species. I'll hand over to Francis now to talk a little bit more about the river channel. And Francis, if you just let me know when you want to move to a new slide.
Yeah.
And if anyone has any questions for any of the stuff I've just very quickly gone through, then please let me know once Francis gets to the end of his presentation.
So I think it's traditional to check that you can hear me.
You're very faint, Francis.
Very faint. What if I hold that there? Is that better?
Only a wee bit.
Only a wee bit. Great.
Yeah, that's a bit better. You're coming clearer now.
Okay. So as Laura said, what SEPA were very interested in here was trying to restore the river. The Garrell Burn's in a pretty good state for most of it above Kilsyth, but this was an area that was clearly previously engineered and wasn't in a great condition. And SEPA and the Scottish Government have objectives to try and improve our rivers where we can. So we saw an opportunity to cooperate with the council. The habitat and engagement and access work that Laura and the team and other people in the council want to undertake is fits very nicely with the river restoration and access to green space and all of those objectives. So if you click to the next slide, maybe. So we decided that we'd get surveys done to see how natural we could try and get the river. We'll never get it to a pristine natural state, but we worked with designers to come up with an option where we could widen the river, make it more open, allow it to connect more naturally with the marsh, and therefore flood into the marsh rather than just going around damaging footpaths and causing problems, actually recharge the marsh with water. And as you can see, that channel that's still very much under construction, but it's already a much more open feature. And I'm hoping from pictures like that and the drone footage that you can kind of see what would be like, because at the moment really we've got it's a deep trench that's kind of cut off from people because of the embankments built up against it along the footpaths. And in high summer, as many of you will know better than me, you can walk down there and be right next to the river and not quite see it. So we think this is just generally a better landscape feature when it's greened up and grown, obviously. What you can see in that picture is a liner. That's a clay and fibre liner that is just going to keep that channel sound and safe in that section where we know that there was an old municipal tip. We didn't really find very much, but we just want to make sure the channel isn't going to cut into that. And then the contractors have put down some of the gravels to keep that weight down, but it's giving you an impression of the sort of riverbed that we'll get in the future. Do you want to go to the next slide? And as luck would have it, we've had some weather and some water, and it actually, when it's collected into the new channel, you actually get to see, in a way, what the channel will look like. So that's not actually connected yet to the Kelvin or to the Garrell. It's still isolated while we're doing the construction work, but it gives you an impression of what the channel will look like, probably in a very high flow, but nevertheless a much more meandering feature in the landscape. And we didn't want to use, yeah, you could go to the next one, Laura, actually. We wanted to be as green as possible with the techniques that we're using where we can. It's not always easy with projects like this, but one of the techniques we're using is to defend the riverbanks and just to add a bit more stability to the new channel is woody structures. I think actually the next slide is a bit better for seeing what that looks like. So if you were on site, you'd see that we've already started collecting trees, tree boles and trunks that are actually fairly, they're actually quite a professional engineering feat in themselves. They're dug into the bank with the roots sticking out and then locked in with very angular boulders that keep them in place to stop them floating away and be washed away. And thereby sort of adding a bit more protection from the bank. And that avoids us using more artificial materials. And as I say, the channel, as you can see in that picture, would then be cobbles and gravels as a much more natural feature. So the river would be in a better state after this. The connection to the floodplain would be in a better state. But we're also, as Laura alluded to, creating habitat for fish. We're going to do a bit more work in phase 2 in next summer to get fish past those small weirs at St. Pat's School, just to give them a bit of a lift up over those weirs, so that the fish that we know get into the Garrell Burn can have, frankly, a bit of a happier time and a better environment to thrive in. I don't know whether you want me to add anything else about the river, Laura, but that's what I was going to say. And I should say, this, for us, this is quite a big project. This is, when you measure it, it's roughly, the whole thing is about 1 kilometre of river, really. That's quite a scale of project.
Thanks, Francis. I just wanted to give the other people we've invited along today an opportunity to introduce themselves before we go to questions. Stuart, would you like to start?
Yeah, certainly. Hi, my name's Stuart Findley. I work for WSP. We have carried out the design work on this project for the council and for SEPA, and my colleagues in the design department have engaged their own colleagues who have carried out the civil engineering design for it, and also engaged specialist designers to look at things like, as Laura mentioned there, the fish passes and these defences for the erosion protection. And so we've gone to specialists where we didn't have the internal knowledge of something that's fairly that requires a specialist to look at it and bring their expertise to the project. The fish passes, again, I think was something that the guys didn't have much experience of in the office, so they've looked to alternative sources to get information on where they can get from fish passes. We also have a team of people supervising the works on site, so there's my ground remediation colleagues attend site regularly. They're there 2-3 times a week. And as Francis mentioned, there was a potential for coming across an old municipal tip, an old landfill tip in there, that they had looked at the site investigation that was carried out prior to the project going on site, and found, from the boreholes and trial pits that were there, they found rubbish that indicated that there was a tip there. So the clay liners there to protect, to stop the bankings being washed out into potentially the tip that's already there, and washing that downstream. So these guys are there all regularly. We've also got an ecology clerk of works, Tracy, who's there again 2-3 times a week. And we've come across a lot of invasive species, and she keeps her eye on the invasive species, on any habitat that we come across. We came across recently one of the alignments for a footpath, for example, that we were looking at installing. Where Laura's indicating on the screen there was a pile of logs, which to you or I you think it's a pile of logs, but she identified that was a potential habitat for great crested newts. So by Laura Tracy saying, we have this potential. We actually looked at the potential, and we've realigned the footpath there to avoid that. So that's what they're there for every day, just having a wee look and seeing on site, and working with George Leslie, the contractor, who are on site, to identify any issues that may be arising, or identify things that they've spotted, and come to a solution to any problems that we have on site. I also work as the project manager, managing the contract between the council and George Leslie, the contractor. So that's WSP's role in this project. We've probably been engaged in this for a couple of years, I think, before I was brought on board, just at the start of the construction period. And so the guys who have worked on it have been there for a couple of years, getting to know the site, and then design the design that we've got now.
Thanks for that, Stuart. That was really, really useful. Mark or Connor, or both of you, would you like to come in?
Yeah, I'll jump in first, Connor, if you don't mind. My name's Mark Gallagher. I'm the contracts manager for George Leslie. As Stuart says, we are the successful contractor in bidding for this civil engineering works. George Leslie, I'll do a wee bit of the George Leslie cover, and I'll let Connor go through the site team, because we've got quite an extensive site team on this job. So George Leslie itself, for a civil engineering contractor working wholly in the Scottish market, and we have been for over 50 years. Based in Glasgow initially, moved out to Barrhead, and we've been in the Barrhead offices for 40 odd years now. But we work all over Scotland, predominantly in water and wastewater at the moment. We do a lot of work in marine, and we have done a lot of the environmental engineering recently with contracts linked to SEPA, and by chance and through SEPA with the North Lanarkshire Council for this project. So we have bring a bit of experience. Laura had mentioned, and Francis had mentioned about fish passes coming in the later part of the contract, which we're hopefully we'll bring in that expertise and to the construction element. So, thank you.
I am Connor McDermott. I'm the site agent for George Leslie. So my role is just to manage the day-to-day running of the project. So that involves the physical works, monitoring the health and safety and the quality control. So our team on site, as Mark was saying, we've got Matthias, our foreman. We've got two local trainee engineers. And on a wider scale, we have our planner, who's of Kilsyth residents. So he was a great help for some insight knowledge to the local area, and our quantity surveyor, Chris Fraser. So as kind of Laura was alluding to, the bulk of the works in this phase was the excavation for the burn, and upgrading the south-west section of the footpath, that will be readily accessible from next week, which is great. So it's good to start seeing the project coming together and getting smaller to manage, and to get back opened up to the public. So yeah, it's obviously a very interesting project for all of us. Working with WSP and SEPA, it's good to have that background knowledge and design information to help us along. So hopefully we're not creating too much of a hassle for the locals, and by the end of the project, you're really happy with the outcome.
Thanks very much for that, Connor. I think that was a really good overview. So we've allowed about 20 minutes now for questions. So please, you have us all here. Please do ask questions.